It begins with a subtle observation of what earns approval. We learn to calibrate our heartbeat to the expectations of those who came before us, long before we understand the weight of the debt we are incurring. The early years are spent gathering the vocabulary of others, assuming their definitions of value are universal and absolute. We do not ask if the path we walk is the one we were meant for. We simply move forward because everyone else is facing that direction. It is a quiet, seamless transition from being to performing, where the original impulse is slowly muffled by the persistent demands of a future that has already been mapped out for us. We become experts in a language that we do not naturally speak, perfecting the syntax of a life that was never intended for our specific anatomy. The cost is not immediate, but it is cumulative, settling into the marrow of our identity like a cold, immovable sediment that grows heavier with every passing year of successful imitation. We spend our prime years building a structure we do not intend to inhabit. Each milestone achieved feels less like a victory and more like a heavy stone added to a foundation that cannot support our actual needs. There's a specific kind of fatigue that comes from excelling at things that do not matter to the soul. It is a high-functioning hollowness, a competence that masks a profound lack of direction. We look at our accomplishments and see the fingerprints of parents, teachers, and peers, but our own touch is nowhere to be found. The architecture of our existence is impressive to the casual observer, yet it provides no shelter for the person we actually are. We are tenants in a reality designed by committee, paying rent in the currency of our own vitality. The pursuit continues because to stop would be to admit that the summit we are climbing offers a view we never truly wanted to see, and the descent feels more dangerous than the climb. The ritual of the morning becomes an exercise in maintenance rather than renewal. We prepare ourselves to meet the world not as we are, but as we are expected to be. There is a subtle friction in every gesture, a slight delay between the thought and the action, as we translate our internal state into something marketable. We have learned to prioritize the perception of our lives over the experience of them. This constant translation is exhausting, requiring a cognitive load that leaves little room for genuine presence. We are so busy sustaining the image of a productive, successful individual that we have forgotten how to simply exist without a metric to satisfy. The quiet moments are the most difficult because in the absence of external noise, the lack of an internal signal becomes deafening. We have become so efficient at being what they want that we have become strangers to the very person we were meant to protect and nurture. There is an unsettling quality to the silence that follows a significant achievement. We expect a resonance, a sense of arrival that justifies the years of effort, but instead, we find a thin, metallic taste of indifference. The success belongs to the role, not the actor. We have spent so much time perfecting the performance that we have lost the ability to distinguish the script from our own thoughts. The desires we chase are borrowed, yet the exhaustion they produce is entirely our own. We are running a race that has no finish line, only intermediate checkpoints that demand more speed and more sacrifice. The emotional texture of our days is defined by a low-level anxiety, a persistent fear that we will be found out as the imposters we have become. We are terrified that if we stop striving, the entire structure will collapse, revealing the void where a self-directed life should have been. This is the hidden tax on a life lived for the approval of others. We look at the trajectory of our lives and realize it follows a logic that is not our own. Our ambitions are often just the echoes of someone else's insecurities or the unfinished business of a previous generation. We carry these burdens with a sense of duty, mistaken for passion. The weight of these borrowed desires distorts our posture, making it impossible to walk with any sense of organic grace. We move with a mechanical precision, hitting all the marks and meeting all the deadlines, while the internal pilot has long since disengaged from the controls. There is a profound sense of loss that cannot be named, because on paper, everything is as it should be. We have the markers of success, the signs of a life well managed, yet we feel like ghosts haunting our own history. The disconnect between our external reality and our internal landscape creates a tension that never resolves, a static that colors every perception and every memory. Authenticity becomes a luxury we can no longer afford. To be authentic would require dismantling the very systems that provide us with security and status. We have traded our peace for a predictable form of misery, one that is socially acceptable and even envied. The erasure of the self is not a sudden event, but a slow, rhythmic erosion. Every time we say yes when we mean no, every time we prioritize a career path that bores us over a curiosity that scares us, we lose a layer of our original skin. We are becoming transparent, fading into the background of a life that was meant to be our primary colors. The choices we make are defensive, designed to prevent disappointment in others rather than to foster satisfaction in ourselves. We are living in the third person, observing our own lives as if they were a case study in effective social integration, wondering when the actual experience of living will finally begin to take hold. The internal landscape becomes a curated space for guests who never arrive. We build monuments to our industry and our discipline, but there is no one inside to appreciate the scale of the architecture. The effort required to maintain this exhibition is immense, leaving us too drained to actually enjoy the space we have created. We are perpetually preparing for a moment of repose that is always scheduled for a future that never arrives. The present is merely a staging area for a hypothetical success that will supposedly grant us the permission to finally be ourselves. But the permission is a myth. The more we invest in the borrowed version of success, the harder it becomes to reclaim the original self. We are locked in a cycle of accumulation, believing that the next promotion, the next purchase, or the next accolade will finally fill the hollow center. Instead, each addition only increases the volume of the emptiness, making the silence within more pronounced. We notice the drift most clearly in the quiet hours of the night. The things we claim to want during the day seem foreign and cold when the lights are low. There is a sense of being misaligned, like a gear that no longer fits the machine it was built for. We try to remember when the shift occurred, when our own desires were replaced by the scripts of the collective, but the memory is elusive. It happened in the margins, in the small concessions, and the minor compromises that seemed harmless at the time. Now, the cumulative effect is a life that feels like a costume. We are wearing the success of another person, and the fit is all wrong, pinches at the soul and restricts the breath. We have become proficient at ignoring the discomfort, convincing ourselves that this is simply the price of maturity, the necessary burden of a responsible life. But the body knows the truth, manifesting the tension in ways we cannot easily ignore or explain away. Memory becomes a selective process, filtering out the moments of genuine rebellion to preserve the narrative of steady progress. We look back at our younger selves and see only the potential that has since been harnessed and directed toward productive ends. The wilder, more chaotic impulses have been sterilized and discarded. We have traded our capacity for wonder for a capacity for output. The drift from the self is a form of slow motion disappearance. We are still physically present, still functioning at a high level, but the essential spark has been redirected to power a machine that does not serve us. The things we remember most vividly are the failures to meet someone else's standards, while our own internal victories go unrecorded and uncelebrated. We are writing a biography for an audience we don't even like, ensuring the plot is coherent and the ending is predictable, while the protagonist remains a complete and total mystery. The lexicon we use to describe our lives is heavy and metallic. We speak of optimization, leverage, and growth, using words that belong to the world of commerce rather than the world of human experience. There is no warmth in these terms, no room for the organic messiness of a soul in transition. We have adopted the language of our captors, believing that if we can describe our dissatisfaction in professional terms, it will become manageable. But the heart does not understand the concept of a quarterly review or a strategic pivot. It only understands the presence or absence of meaning. We are optimizing a life that has no central purpose, perfecting the mechanics of a journey to nowhere. The more articulate we become in this borrowed language, the less we are able to communicate our actual needs. We are becoming incredibly sophisticated at explaining why we are doing things that we do not want to do, and why we must continue doing them. Time begins to behave strangely when you are living someone else's timeline. Years disappear in a blur of high-functioning trance, where every day is a repetition of the same performative gestures. There is a lack of depth to the experience, a flatness that makes it difficult to anchor oneself in the present. We are always looking ahead to the next milestone, treating the current moment as a hurdle to be cleared. When we finally reach the goals we were told to value, they feel like artifacts from a civilization we don't belong to. They are heavy and cold, offering no warmth or light. We realize that we have traded the only currency that matters, our finite time, for a collection of trophies that we don't even want to display. The realization is not a sharp pain but a dull, persistent ache, a sense of having been cheated by a system we worked so hard to master. We are rich in achievements, but bankrupt in actual lived experience. A cold, lingering resentment begins to form toward the architects of our ambition. It is not an active, burning anger, but a quiet recognition of the betrayal. We were told that if we followed the steps, we would find fulfillment. We followed the steps with a religious devotion, only to find that the destination is a desert. The people who gave us the map are also lost, following their own inherited delusions. We are all participants in a grand generale of hollow dreams, passing the baton of expectation from one exhausted hand to the next. The realization that the authorities in our lives were just as confused as we are is both a liberation and a horror. It means the path we are on leads nowhere, but it also means there is no one to blame but the collective inertia of a society that prizes appearance over substance. We are left standing in the middle of a life we built to please people who are no longer even looking. We have become secondary characters in our own narratives, serving the plot of a story written by societal consensus and ancestral anxieties. Our own needs and inclinations are treated as obstacles to be overcome or distractions to be minimized. The self has been relegated to the role of a silent observer, watching as the public persona makes decisions, signs contracts, and enters relationships that the inner self has no interest in. This internal split creates a sense of profound alienation. We move through the world with a feeling of being slightly out of sync, a ghost in the machine of our own existence. The more successful the public persona becomes, the more the inner self retreats into the shadows, becoming more fragile and more difficult to reach. We are achieving everything we were told to want, while the person who was supposed to enjoy it is slowly fading away, replaced by a set of well-rehearsed habits and reflexes. There is a terrifying possibility that if we were to strip away the borrowed desires, nothing would remain. We have spent so much time layering the expectations of others over our original selves that the two have become fused. To remove the borrowed ambition might be to remove the very thing that holds us together. This fear keeps us trapped in the pursuit, even when we know it is futile. We would rather be a successful imposter than a non-existent original. The void of an unformed self is more daunting than the misery of a misaligned one. So we continue to chase the targets, to meet the quotas, and to perform the rituals, using the momentum of the pursuit to avoid the stillness where the truth resides. We are afraid of the silence, because in the silence, there is no one there to tell us who we are or what we should want. We have forgotten how to listen to the quiet, subtle pulse of our own genuine interest. Looking around, we see the collective choreography of ambition. Thousands of individuals moving in perfect synchrony toward the same hollow summits, each believing they are acting on original intent. It is a mass movement of people fleeing from their own authenticity toward a standardized version of success. We find comfort in the crowd, using the ubiquity of the pursuit to validate our own choices. If everyone else is running in this direction, it must be the right way. We ignore the exhaustion in the eyes of those around us, seeing only the markers of their status. We are all participating in the same illusion, reinforcing each other's commitment to a life that satisfies no one. The broader perspective offers no comfort, only the realization that the theft of the self is a systemic phenomenon. We are part of a culture that mines human potential for the sake of an abstract progress, leaving behind a trail of hollowed-out lives and quiet, unresolved tensions. We are the heirs to a legacy of hollow dreams, and we are dutifully preparing to pass them on. We teach the next generation the same metrics of worth, the same vocabulary of optimization, and the same fear of falling behind. We ensure that the cycle of performative existence remains unbroken, mistaking our own survival for success. We give our children the same maps that led us into the wilderness, telling them that the destination is worth the sacrifice. There is a profound sadness in this inheritance, a sense of perpetuating a fraud because we don't know how to do anything else. We want them to be safe, so we teach them how to be small. We want them to be successful, so we teach them how to be someone else. The cycle continues not out of malice, but out of a collective inability to imagine a life that isn't defined by the pursuit of external validation. We are building a future out of the same bricks that created our own prisons. The well-lived life has become a rigid checklist of standard satisfactions. It is a blueprint for a prison where the walls are made of consensus and the bars are made of comfort. We are encouraged to decorate ourselves with the latest symbols of status, believing that the quality of the wallpaper changes the nature of the confinement. The quiet violence of this arrangement is that it feels so reasonable. It is difficult to complain about a life that looks perfect from the outside. To feel empty in the face of abundance is seen as a personal failing rather than a natural reaction to an artificial environment. We are conditioned to feel gratitude for the very things that are suffocating us. The pressure to be happy within the confines of a borrowed life is perhaps the most exhausting expectation of all. It requires a level of self-deception that eventually becomes unsustainable, leading to a collapse that is often mistaken for a crisis rather than a desperate attempt at liberation. We defend our misery because it was expensive to acquire. We have invested too much time, effort, and identity into our borrowed successes to simply walk away from them. To admit that we have been chasing the wrong things would be to admit that a large portion of our lives has been a mistake. We cling to the trophies because they are the only evidence we have of our existence. Without them, we are nothing but a collection of unfulfilled impulses and forgotten dreams. The cost of reclaiming the self is the loss of everything the imposter has built. Most of us are not willing to pay that price. We would rather continue the performance, hoping that eventually the mask will become the face. We find a morbid satisfaction in the weight of our burdens, using our exhaustion as a badge of honor. We are proud of how much we can endure, never stopping to ask why we are enduring it in the first place, or who actually benefits from our continued sacrifice. There's no sudden awakening, no dramatic moment of clarity where the truth sets us free. There is only the continued awareness of the weight, the persistent feeling of wearing clothes that are too tight. We carry on with a heightened sense of the absurdity of our actions, yet we continue to perform them. The tension does not resolve. It merely becomes a permanent feature of our internal landscape. We learn to live with the static, to navigate the world with a fractured sense of identity. We are aware of the theft, but we have forgotten how to reclaim what was taken. The life we lead is a compromise that satisfies no one, a middle ground between the person we were and the person we were told to be. We move through the days with a quiet, observational detachment, watching ourselves go through the motions of a success that feels increasingly like a burden we were never meant to carry alone. In the end, we are left with the sensation of a life nearly finished, filled with the artifacts of someone else's passion. We look at the collection of our days and see a series of events that happened to someone who looked like us, spoke like us, but was not us. There is a final, quiet admission that we were never really here. We were always elsewhere, preparing for a future that was already occupied by the expectations of others. The peace we sought was always just out of reach, hidden behind the next goal or the next achievement. Now, with the finish line in sight, the futility of the pursuit is undeniable. The success we achieved belongs to the world, leaving us with nothing but the memory of the effort. We are left in the silence, witnessing the slow dissolution of a borrowed identity, waiting for a resolution that we now realize was never part of the script. We are simply here, in the absence of our own lives,